Hello to the people of YouTube. This is a video about why the UK should leave the European Union. Both the pro-EU and the anti-EU cases are largely based on prophecy. That is, saying we will have a good time if we leave or if we stay. The problem with such policies is that predicting the future is impossible. What we'll do in the future is determined by what knowledge we'll create. What happens if we stay in or leave the EU depends on the resulting policies, and those will be created by people coming up with new ideas. And we can't predict the content of new ideas because if we could predict their content, we would already have those new ideas. So instead of looking at what policies will be adopted, which we don't know, we have to look at the institutions that will be used to decide those policies. Now, good policies require creating knowledge about what can and can't be done, and specific circumstances in particular places and stuff like that. So circumstances in a particular industry, say. If you try to implement a policy that can't be implemented because it's impossible, then you're going to have a bad time. Now, creating knowledge requires trying out policies and leaders and being able to reject them if they suck. You can't necessarily tell in advance if a policy is going to work, so sometimes you have to try it out, and if it sucks, you need to be able to get rid of the policy leader. Political systems should be judged by whether they make it possible to replace bad policies and leaders. So let's have a look at the EU and whether the EU makes it possible to reject bad policies and leaders. So the EU consists of the European Council, which is the group of the heads of EU states, the European Commission, which is appointed by the Council and originates legislation and makes decisions. You then have the European Parliament, who are elected. They can vote legislation up or down, but can't originate legislation. They control the budget, elect the President of the Commission, and can force the Commission to resign. Now, the only part of this set of institutions that you really have much influence over is the European Parliament. So let's have a look at what its attributes are as far as getting rid of bad policies and leaders is concerned. So the EU Parliament is divided into blocks, each consisting of a mixture of parties from different countries. Now, it's extremely difficult to judge a political party without being acquainted with cultural context. For example, Margaret Thatcher and Edward Heath were both in the Conservative Party in the UK, but they had very different policies. So names of political parties give almost no useful information about policy. You have to know in detail what's going on in that country, about the different factions within parties, which one happens to be dominant at a particular time, and that sort of thing. As a result, we can't understand why a coalition decided on policies in many cases because we don't know what ideas the people involved were acting on. In addition, the coalition's policies may be a compromise between different ideas because just being labelled conservative doesn't imply anything particular about your ideas. So if you have two conservative parties cooperating, then they might have very different ideas about what to do, and the policy may be a compromise between these very different ideas. Same would be true of left-wing parties, but anyway. Now, as a result of the fact that the policy in question may be a compromise, in that case, nobody had any reason to expect the policy to work, and there will be no standard by which to judge it a success or failure, because there's no underlying explanation of how it's supposed to work. As a result, there's no way to decide whether to keep that policy or the people who come up with it. Now, in the UK government, outside the EU, the situation would be different. With the UK government in the EU, a lot of its policy decisions can be and are overridden by the EU, so it's not quite the same situation. But outside the EU, you do actually have some accountability for the government. In an individual constituency, a constituent can understand what an MP does by reading what he says and looking at his voting record and stuff like that. And they can vote him out if they decide he sucks. Usually, in the UK, one party is in charge of the legislature and can do more or less what it wants. The policy it adopts can be judged if there is some standard explanation for its adoption, and you can look at whether it actually fulfills the criteria for success according to that explanation. And the party in charge can be judged as well, because it could do whatever it wants, so it can't blame anybody else if it decides on bad policies, or if it decides on a policy for which it doesn't really have any explanation, or whatever. If it does something bad, then you can throw it out, because they can't really blame anyone else. So, if the UK leaves the EU, then it will be possible to remove bad policies and governments. If the UK doesn't leave, we'll be stuck with bad policies and with bad EU officials. Now, you might think this all sounds very nice and theoretical, but I get particular benefit X from the EU, like funding for my scientific experiments or whatever it happens to be. Okay? Good luck with that. You will need luck, because you can't have any reason to think that the policy you happen to favour will continue. The EU could revoke its support any time they want, and you won't be able to stop them. They are not accountable to you. You cannot throw them out if they make a bad decision. You get the benefit they give you purely on sufferance and not for any other reason. They happen to want to give it to you. They don't have to pay any attention to any arguments you give. They don't have to worry that they're going to lose their jobs if you decide they suck. So they don't really have any reason to give you anything you want or to listen to anything you say. I would think that you should be keen to have a government that is actually where you have some chance of holding it accountable if it does something bad. And in the EU, you don't have that. You should not throw away a chance to have an accountable government for a few pieces of silver thrown to you from some unaccountable bureaucrat who doesn't really have any reason to give you it. So that's all I have to say, and thanks for listening if you did.